Skinner's main point is that there is really no essential difference between the lack of value judgment in the technical problem of designing the bomb and the decision to build one. The only difference is that the motives for building the bomb are not, quote, clear, unquote. Maybe they are not clear for Professor Skinner, but they are clear to many students of history. In fact, there was more than one reason for the decision to build the atomic bomb, and similarly for the hydrogen bomb. The atomic bomb, the fear of Hitler's building the bomb, perhaps the wish to have a superior weapon against the Soviet Union for possible later conflict. This holds the true, especially for the hydrogen bomb. The logic of a system that is forced to increase its armaments to support its struggle with competing systems. And that's similar to what's going on in the Middle East right now with the treaty where they signed in the Middle East to not make any new bombs in the Middle East and stuff. Quite aside from this military, strategic, and political reasons, there is, I believe, another one which is equally important. I refer to the maxim that is one of the axiomic norms of cybernetic society. Quote, something ought to be done because because it is technically possible to do it, quote unquote. Let me see it. Something ought to be done because it is technically possible to do it. If it is possible to build nuclear weapons, they must be built, even if they might destroy us all. If it is possible to travel to the moon or to the planets, it must be done, even if at the expense of many unfulfilled needs here on Earth. This principle means the negation of all humanistic values, but it nevertheless represents a value, maybe the supreme norm of, quote, technotronic society, unquote. Note, I have discussed this idea in the Revolution of Hope E. Forman 1968 independently. H. formulated the same principle in this paper. Dr. Michael Maccoby has drawn my attention to some results of his study of the management of the highly developed industries, which indicate that the principles can imply thought. Skinner does not care to examine the reasons for building the bomb, and he asks us to wait for further developments of behaviorism to solve the mystery. In his views on social processes, he shows the same inability to understand hidden, non-verbalized motives as he does in his treatment of psychical processes, since most of what people say about their emotion in political as well as in personal life is notoriously fictitious. The reliance on what is verbalized blocks the understanding of social and psychical processes. So since most of what people say about their motivations in political as well as in personal life is notoriously fictitious, the reliance on what is verbalized blocks the understanding of social and psychical processes. In other instances, Skinner struggles in values without apparently being aware of it. In the same paper, for instance, he writes, quote, "None, I am sure, wishes to develop new master-slave relationships or bend the will of the people to despotic rulers in new ways. These are patterns of control appropriate to a world without science," unquote. B.F. Skinner, 1961. In which decade is Professor Skinner living? Are there no systems that do indeed want to bend the will of the people to dictators? And are these systems only to be found in cultures, quote, "without science," unquote? Skinner seems to believe in an old-fashioned ideology of progress. The Middle Ages were, quote, "dark," unquote, because they had no science, and science necessarily leads to the freedom of man. The fact is that no leader or government explicitly states his intention of bending the will of the people anymore. They are apt to use new words which sound like the opposite of the old ones. No dictator calls himself a dictator, and every system claims that it expresses the will of the people in the countries of the, quote, "free world," unquote. On the other hand, quote, "anonymous authority," unquote, and manipulation have replaced overt authority in education, work, and